So, two events take place last night. I figure I might as well do a video this morning where I discuss both and drop my pen again. So, Connor McDavid is upset because Brandon Manning said during the game last night, "Hey, I did it on purpose." Now, watch the play at full speed. The play where McDavid gets hurt. The idea that somebody could intentionally have done that, not at that speed. You get tangled up with a guy you know is the best player in the league, or going to be the best player in the league. Sidney Crosby probably is still the best player in the league, but you you don't intend to put him through the boards and end his career, kind of thing. So I understand McDavid being angry, but I also understand how hockey works. And I understand just from playing floor hockey or just road hockey, just with friends. And there'd be times where, person A gets hurt by whoever, and that person that hurt them the next game will say, "Man, you thought it was bad last time. Just wait." And it's part of the mental game. The fact that Manning said whatever during the game and McDavid and his teammates went nuts. It shows that the Oilers are learning. They still have a long way to go. They're not quite there yet. I say that because a veteran team would get that comment and just sort of shrug it off. McDavid's young. The Oilers are a young team. And they took the bait. This is how I see it. This is how the Philadelphia Flyers have played the game for the last, I don't know, forever. Um, Flyers players are generally assholes. This is not new news. You put on a Flyers jersey, and I will say this, the same thing happens for whatever reason with Bruins jerseys. The ego gets a little bigger, and the mind games start. And that, to me, is all this is. This is Manning's way of saying, okay, I can't beat McDavid with skill, but I can get in his head. Now, apparently, Lucic went after him. He wouldn't take the bait. Of course not. You don't want to fight. I was one of the worst instigators when I played floor hockey or road hockey or soccer or pretty much anything, due to the fact that I'm shorter than a lot of other guys. But I was very fast. Kind of have to be when you're shorter. Um, I would antagonize people. I would say whatever I had to throw the other team off. I wouldn't say anything, about your family, or I wouldn't say anything really, really offensive. But man, I ticked guys off. There were plenty of times where I would be playing floor hockey, and if I was playing against somebody who was particularly easy to go around as a defenseman, I'd say, "Hey, you just got traded. Your replacement's coming in. They got to get a pylon out of the parking lot. That's your replacement." And and then I would keep doing it. So you can't just say that once. You say it once, guys go. But if every time you go around the guy, you yell out "pylon," eventually the guy's going to get kind of pissed off. Eventually, he's going to probably throw a punch. I don't care. My job as a player, no matter what I was playing, if it was just a friendly Friday night game with friends, or just at a church or wherever, my job was, okay, that's the other team. Tonight we're not friends. Tonight I'm going to say whatever I have to throw you off your game. It's just how it and that's when I hear this Manning thing, I sort of shrug and go, yeah, of course. And I'm sure that's all it was. I'm sure basically what was said was either, I meant to do it right. Probably the wink, probably the laugh. And David took it, or, they get in a scrum and he says it in his ear. Or he says, "You thought that was bad, wait for the next one." You say things during a game. Where I get thrown off is where guys like Burrows. I'm going to say this about Burrows. Burrows will make personal attacks against your family, he will make attacks, knowing if there's some kind of a deep-seated issue you've had, if it's drugs, if it's whatever, Burrows will mention it during a game. Burrows has no dignity when it comes to how to do it. And I don't equate that with what Manning apparently did last night. What Manning did last night, that's fine. I mean that. I mean, from a hockey perspective, that is fine. To go to a guy that you injured and took out for months and go, yeah, that was intentional. I probably should have got suspended. My bad, huh? And just because I'm sure to him, he's thinking, all right, we just won the game. Because now all the Oilers, all they're thinking is they want to kill me. They're not as worried about the score. They're not as worried about what my teammates are doing. They just want me. Perfect. And again, if I could throw a guy off, because I couldn't score goals when I played floor hockey or road hockey or soccer or again any sport. I was not the best offensive player, but defensively I was pretty good. And in terms of the psychological side of things, oh, I could throw a guy off. I could play a game of soccer, and while I was playing soccer, I would commentate the entire game as the British, because I watched Premier League soccer quite a bit as a teenager, to the point where I got quite good at being the announcer. And every time certain players would wind up for a shot, I would see into the future and yell out, "Oh, he missed the net. How do you miss the net from there?" And eventually, he'd start missing because I'd be right behind him when I said it, or right in front of him. And it's enough if you yell it right in their face. It's not against the rules. Impersonating British announcer badly, 2 minutes. No, it's not a penalty. Running up to a goalie when you're playing floor hockey and yelling Patrick Waugh in his ear every time he makes a save, to the point where eventually he's so jumpy because he's so hearing you yell Patrick Waugh that he misses. It was the greatest thing ever. It was just, and still to this day, it's my proudest moment. And I never scored any of the goals. Well, not at first. At first, it would be, I'd let my teammate come in, and I'd go in on the net to screen and yell Patrick Waugh when the goalie made the save. Eventually, once I was in his head, I'd be coming down the floor with the ball, and you could just see him like he's going to yell at me. He's gonna yell, and I mean this was a deafening scream. And gone, done, finished. And I would put it right through the 5-hole. I would just roll it right through, and then no yelling. I'd say, oh, geez, I was going to yell Patrick Waugh, but you just sieved it. I guess you're Rasico. And I could turn around and walk away. And his night was over. His night in net was over right there, because he's probably already allowed a couple of goals because he flinched from me yelling. Now he's already allowing goals. I don't need to yell at him anymore. So for Manning, he only had to say it once to Connor McDavid. It is reprehensible. Okay, I'm not saying that bragging about injuring a guy is good sportsmanship. I'm just saying it's part of the game. It is part of the game, and the Oilers need to get this through their heads. They're right now, if it wasn't for loser points, they're below 500. This ride the Oilers have been on, they're on their way down, and they've got to get it together. Right now, it's the mental game. They've got to get together. They've got to get their heads in the game. I know there's a lot of injuries on that blue line. I know they're a young team. They've got to get their heads into it. Because with what Philly did last night, with what Manning did last night, you got to know there's 28 other teams that watched what Philly did last night and said, we can get in Connor's head too. Especially some of those Eastern teams. They're pricks. So McDavid's night was bad. Carey Price's night was good. That's the other thing I want to talk about. Carey Price, thank you, Carey Price. Now, he may face a suspension because you can't punch guys with your blocker on. But it is so nice to see a goaltender showing some fire for a change. And seeing a goaltender willing to defend his crease physically. Because the goalies that I remember defending their crease physically are guys like Ron Hextall, Patrick Waugh. I think it was Belfour that used to chop him. He used to just give him a little stick right in the back of the ankle. And Billy Smith, of course, was the best for it. when you have a reputation as a goaltender who will defend his crease himself. So you're not waiting on the NHL to suspend anybody, and you're not waiting on your defense to come back and help you, which is good because Montreal's defense is a little soft in places. Not Shea Weber, but in general, there's some soft guys out there that, as Carey Price, you want to defend that crease yourself. You want to be a little bigger, like Sean Burke was. You come out and you got to know that if a guy tries to run into you, and it's like, and I agree with Lawless of all people, Gary Lawless on TSN. Yeah, I was as surprised as you are when he said, Carey Price has to let guys know that he's not going to take it again after the way that the Rangers ran him over in the playoffs, and Montreal was done right there. He has to let players know, if you make a run, I'm going to take you out. I'm not going to wait for the teammates. I'm not going to wait for the referee to give you a penalty. I'm not going to wait, because it will make players think twice. It's funny because I've talked before in previous videos about how enforcers don't work as deterrents. A tough goalie does, because an enforcer plays 8 or 9 minutes a game. The goalie plays all 60. You have to go near the goaltender if you're a forward, and he will take you out. And his stick is heavier than yours. He's wearing a hell of a lot more equipment than you are. And most goalies these days run between 6'4" and 6'6" in height. So what Carey Price did last night with these guys, and showing himself to be capable of defending himself if need be, good. Full marks to Carey Price for that. And again, and these are kind of related in a way, these two things. Carey Price shows he's tough and he's not going to put up with any shit. Connor McDavid shows he's susceptible and a little bit sensitive. And McDavid needs to toughen up a little bit, not physically. He doesn't need to go out and fight. No, that's what that meathead Lucic is there for. Let that meathead Cashian go out and do it. But he needs to, when somebody does this kind of thing, when Manning says, I meant to do it, say, no, you did a lousy job. I'm back. I'm the best player in the league. How's your career going? Just turn it back on him. Turn it back on him. Just say, how many points have you scored? I scored more in the hospital than you scored in the last 6 months. Like, put it back on him. Put it back on him. Say something, say to him, yeah, well, if you have to do that to keep an NHL career because you stink at the actual game playing portion of it, have fun, buddy, and turn around and skate away from him. There are plenty of insults he could have thrown back, and you don't have to get personal. Like I said, you don't have to get personal like a Sean Avery would have, or like Burroughs might, or I think Kessler seems like the kind of guy who might do that too. And I don't know that for sure, but there are a lot of players who will talk trash and really personal, but just push it right back on him. Push it right back on him. And he didn't need to go out to the media after the game, but again, he's young. He's a young kid, and we forget that sometimes because he is the best player in the league. But he is a young kid, and this is a learning experience for him. He doesn't have to worry about Manning again now until next month when they come into Edmonton, and I really hope that's not a fight-filled game. Manning had better be ready to fight with Lucic or Cashin, because he has to. After making that statement, and that's the thing too, when you make that statement, you have to be ready to fight. And again, I'm going back to even my example just from playing here. I had to be willing to take a punch for the things I was saying. If I wasn't willing to take a punch, then I'm a coward. I'm not talking about a full-on fight in my case, but in the NHL, you have to be ready for a full-on fight. So Manning had better come into Edmonton, and one or two things happens. Either Philly healthy scratches them because they need to win the game and they don't want to get caught up in a fight-filled game, or he fights in the first 5 minutes like Kadri did in Vancouver, and then it's over. So, but anyways, yeah, it's just one of those things from last night. Last comment on Florida. I watched Florida-Pittsburgh last night. Florida is the worst team in the league right now. I will say the worst team in the East, but I truly believe they're the worst team in the league. Their offense was awful. Their defense was abysmal. And Luongo allowed 3 goals in the first 5 shots. Okay, sweetie. 3 goals in the first 5 shots for Luongo. That was just my daughter saying that My wife-to-be is downstairs making pancakes. It's breakfast time at 9:30 in the morning. But yeah, it was the worst game I've seen Florida play all year. That was just awful. And Tom Rowe looks miserable behind the bench. I think Tom Rowe's in an untenable position right now, and that team is going down by the head. They put Riley Smith on the first line, and he looked lost. Before the game, they're like, oh, Riley Smith's back on the first line. He's a 25 goal scorer. Not this year, he's not. He looks absolutely lost. That's the worst I've seen Riley Smith play in 2 years. His last year in Boston, he wasn't very good either. I like Riley Smith a lot, but now he's got this huge long-term contract at $5 million per that kicks in this summer, and I just don't know how he plays up to it. And I said that when they signed him to the long-term contract last summer. And the funniest part is, with his 4 goals in 28 games, his 10 points in 28 games, how much money would they have saved if they had waited until after this season to pay him? It's not like Riley Smith would have sat out because he was in a contract year. He just would have waited like any other player. But now they've created this disaster, and they've got Jokinen for $4 million. They've got Bukestad at $4.1 million. He still hasn't scored a point. It's a lot of money they're putting into guys that aren't scoring right now, and that Ekblad extension at $7.5 million looks really expensive considering what some other players who have comparable totals and are comparable age, considering what they got. So the disaster continues. So McDavid, toughen up, kid. Guys are going to say things. Just say stuff back to them and just let it slide. Price, get ready with your blockers and make sure that guys know that you're not going to put up with any shit, because goaltenders that don't put up with any shit usually don't get ran. They don't get run over. One last thing on that. I remember the Canucks ran over Hasek one game against Buffalo, and Buffalo was pissed. So they sent, I think it was Rob Ray that came down the next shift to go after Sean Burke, who was the Canucks goalie for about a week and a half. Burke met him halfway to the blue line. Like, Burke came up and beat the shit out of him. It was so great, and that's the thing. If you're a goalie who's willing to defend your crease, and Sean Burke was another one of those guys, guys won't run you. They won't. Guys didn't run Patrick Roy a whole lot because Patrick Roy defended himself. He was ready to go stand at center ice and fight anybody. That's part of the reason why they started enforcing the whole goalies can't just stay back there. You come anywhere near that blue line, you're going to get thrown out of the game. Patrick Roy loved it. So, anyways, and final note: Florida sucks. They're a team I will watch every game of theirs from here on because I've got NHL Center Ice, and I will watch because it is impossible not to watch Tire Fire and to hear Florida announcers before every game talking about how it's going to be better, and then it isn't. Anyways, I'll be back later with more stuff. Until then, stay warm. It's extremely cold here, and cold for me is not cold for you, wherever else you are in Canada. If you're in the States, it might be colder where you are, but here it's a little bit below freezing and it's snowing. So it's not that cold, but it's cold for us. All right, thanks for watching, and I will talk to y'all again soon. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're just browsing through.